The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
I'd like to share with you a maaseh that I heard. I tell you, this to me was something. There were two young ladies in Eretz Yisrael. They were gerot. They were converts who converted to Judaism. And both of them, going around Israel, no family, no friends really, putting their past away, moving on now as true gerot. The Rebbitzin said on them that they are true gerot tzedek. And the Rebbitzin said that these girls, Be'ezat Hashem, we're going to help them. We're going to find and help them to find the zivug shidduch. But it was very difficult, you could understand. How these girls, they went around everywhere trying to go out with anyone that was brought to them. Any ben Torah hagun. But who would go out with them? It was very difficult. They had a very tough time. And even with the Rebbitzin, and even with the Talmidei Chachamim, the Rabbanim, that backed them, no one was really ready to go out, and they had a tough time. A very tough time. Now these girls are already past the age of 30. And they're figuring, are they ever going to get married? Who is going to go out with them? I want all the young ladies out there who may be listening to this story. Before I go on, I want you to stop. And I know that definitely in our community and in many communities today, one of the greatest crises is the shidduch crisis, where our young ladies, tzidkaniot, sitting at home without a date, going through very difficult times. I want you to hear this story. I want you to hear the story about two gerot in Eretz Yisrael. We're talking here about converts. Their chances were beyond. But wait, open your hearts and listen to this story. They came one Shabbat to Bnei Brak. They were invited one Friday night to some guy's house for a Shabbat meal. This is their routine. They would go Shabbat from house to house because they had no family, they had no home. So they come to this guy's house Friday night. They come in, they sit down, thank you for inviting us. They sit by the table with the family. So everyone goes, after Kiddush to wash, they come, they washed. The salads begin to be served, and then comes the soup. And the head of the household, he turns to them and says, tell me, I'm sure that being that you are gerot, being that you are converts, I'm sure that you probably have an incredible story. Please, we'd love to hear it. Tell us the story about how you became Jewish. Tell us the life when you were living back in your days when you were still goyim. Tell us, how does a Big Mac taste like? Tell us, McDonald's French fries. We want to hear it. We want to hear it all. Tell us the life of the Goya before you became to Judaism, and tell us how you became Jewish. These girls, they were so embarrassed. They turned red, beat in the face. They were so uncomfortable. So simply, they just brushed it off. Turned to the Balabai and said, well, listen, we're not really up to talking about that now, but let's talk about the parsha. Let's talk about this. They try to change the subject. This guy wouldn't let go. He says, no. I think it would be very interesting to hear the life that you once lived, and the story of how you became Jewish. Please, tell us. And he's pushing. And these girls are feeling so horrible. This tactless guy. And he keeps pushing, and he doesn't take no for an answer. Till finally one of the girls says, listen, we're really not comfortable talking about our past. If you don't mind, let's just move on to something else. This Balabayit got so upset. He stands up from the table. He says, what? In my house? If you don't like my conversation, that my food also isn't good enough for you. Please leave. These girls looked at each other. Their jaws dropped to the floor. They could not believe what they just heard. Until finally reality kicked back and caught them, and they realized, he's serious. They simply shrugged their shoulders, picked themselves up from the Shabbat table, and they walked out. Well, where do they have to go? They don't know anybody in Bnei Brak. They went downstairs in this building to the hall, the front hall of this building, and they sat on a ledge and simply began to cry. And they cried their hearts out. And they felt so terrible. Nowhere to go. Well, finally, after a few minutes, they pulled themselves together, leaning on each other. They picked themselves up to leave, and then they said, wait, 1 second. We made Kiddush. We ate Hamotzi. We didn't say Birkat Hamazon. What are we to do now? We can't go back in there, that's for sure. We're not going back into that apartment with this guy. But we didn't bench. We didn't say Birkat Hamazon. So they sat right back down in the lobby of the building, back on the ledge, and they began to say Birkat Hamazon together, word for word, from memory. Till finally, they got up to the Birkat Bal Habayit. Harachaman hu yivarech et Bal Habayit hazeh. And then they stopped, and they looked at each other. Wait 1 second. Harachaman hu yivarech et Bal Habayit hazeh. Hu ve'ishto ubanav. They couldn't say it. They just couldn't say it. After what he did to us, after he threw us out of his house, after he totally and absolutely embarrassed us, broke us to pieces, we should say the Birkat Bal Habayit in Birkat Hamazon? No way. Harachamanu yivarech et Bal Habayit hazeh? No way. No way. And they sat there for a moment, contemplating what to do. And then just then, one of the girls, she looked at the other in the eye, and she said, no. As if to say, let's say it. Let's forgive him. And they began together, with broken hearts, to say the words, Harachaman hu yivarech et Bal Habayit hazeh. Yes, we forgive him. We forgive him with a whole heart. Hu ve'ishto ubanav bin chasim sheyirbu. We forgive him. Finally, they finished their Birkat Hamazon. They picked themselves up and they left. This story got back to the Rebbitzin, and she called for these two gerot, these girls that were megayeret. She called for them and she told them, is it true? Is this true? That you went and you said the Harachaman Birkat Bal Habayit with a full heart and you forgave him? They shrugged their shoulders. They said yes. If that's the case, Kol hama'avir al midotav ma'avirin mimenu rov pesha'av. You let it go. Something so hurtful, something so terrible. You let it go. Now's the time to ask Borei Olam. Ask him for whatever you want. And these girls broke down crying. And they said, Rebbitzin, all we want is to be able to finally have our own home. That we won't have to go from house to house anymore. All we want is to find our zivug, our husband. The Rebbitzin smiled and said, Harachaman, that Hashem Be'ezat Hashem will send you your husbands this year. Do I have to tell you that later on that year, both of these girls got married? Wonderful Bnei Torah, built beautiful homes, where now they can say, Harachaman hu yivarech et habayit hazeh. Kol hama'avir al midotav Let it go. Turn a cheek. That's the korban of today. Chol korban minchatecha. Not melach timlach. No. Switch around the letters. Machol timchol. The korbanot of today are the korbanot of forgiveness.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org